And the electric with this budget, the new NESO will only be able to do darkness in some parts of their constituencies. What I can say is advocate for a much larger allocation as rural areas who are in darkness. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, however, here's the dilemma. They cannot, is expensive. I have helped some poor families to wire their home, $8 million for house wiring. 2 lights, 2 plugs, meter socket, breakers, and panel. I was advised that there are about 2. What I can say is I definitely have to get to the head of the budget line. House wiring, we have to live, is to be operationalized this year. Open up the job of wiring inspection so that persons who are certified, decades even, the customers will be able to contract an electrician the wiring jobs that the inspectors have passed. Currently, Mr. Speaker, inspection jobs annually on average. Contrast that to the approximately, we'll see the opportunity we have to improve our standing in getting electricity ranked. 95 days on average to get electricity. The country's tied for this. 18 days on average. Mr. Speaker, entrusted public trust. We have accelerated updating some 50 policies, lacking or even the updating of them. It has been a lack of respect for policies. Let me add that this lack of respect for policies and misuse audit reports that I have read. Mr. Speaker, I will be the first to declare all painted with the one corruption paintbrush. I understand. Strangers have come up to me and asked me for the compulsion. There is closer monitoring of the activities resulting in Petrojam seeking clearance from the Ministry on forensic auditor for the job. Major organized crime agency and the Jamaica Gasoline Retail Association to generate electricity. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, the market for bunkering, which is the refueling of ships, was the Speaker. These are dramatic prepared by the Strategic Review Committee that will lay out all the options for the government to and services subsidiaries of PCJ and Petrojam respectively. Mr. Speaker, Tullow Oil completed Jamaica's first ever 3D seismic survey to April 2019 to inform a drill or drop decision in the 3rd quarter of this year. Known over the years to have liquefied natural gas introduced to its shores to reduce the country's on heavy fuel oil, having attracted significant LNG investment. I invite you to take it was 95%. In 2018, it declined to 74%. 5% of in the energy sector, Mr. Speaker, it is important to benefit from the views of our taken steps to re-establish the Jamaica Energy Council, which will be a body that is comprised of will be made to Cabinet in short order once we have received the names of nominees from our stakeholders. This is a mechanism to serve Jamaica better. Finally, in the energy portfolio, Mr. Speaker, the tides have changed and many internal combustion engine cars. This strong push internationally is primarily they will no longer reduce its carbon emission by 12 million tons equivalent by 2030. We, Jamaica, cannot be left behind, nor can it become the dumping. And in this financial year, this ministry's aim is to complete an electric vehicle policy, becoming cheaper and have more capacity. Range anxiety, Jamaicans receive the signal that the time to think differently on issues such as this one has come, and our infrastructure. The establishment of charging stations. I now turn to the technology portfolio.
Extension of time. extension of time.
Those in favor? Those in favor? Those against?
Perspectives on how technology can be used to drive development. Businesses see it as a tool for profit. New world where technology is at the heart of everything we do. As Minister of the Technology Ports, and Jamaicans must play a role in shaping their future. The aim of this administration is to drive innovation, entrepreneurship, and enhance the quality of life. Technology. This includes our Jamaicans with disability. Mr. Speaker, there are so many things that we able with our loved ones and exercise our civic duty. These innovations and services are not always funded. To this end, $50 million has been earmarked to finance projects aimed at using technology. Mr. Speaker, the 2017 ICT Development Index reports our island's internet penetration, broadband internet connectivity by 2030. I must commend the work of our telecommunications systematically. During the financial year, the USF continued its efforts on superhighway, the internet. In this regard, there was continued deployment and management of an island-wide broadband facility. During the financial year 18-19, 25 community access points were completed, $67 million. Additionally, 21 campsites were retrofitted with solar energy systems that we have. Some dating back to 2007 are not having the impact, more oversight and a deliberateness of purpose. Just putting in the computers and solar equipment at some sites with young people as we had hoped. This is where I will be encouraging USF, MPs, sites are relevant to the young people. We want to, when next we do another ICT adoption and usage service for social network. Mr. Speaker, the survey also occupationally targeted entry-level IT training programs for varied age ranges, especially in the rural persons over 50 years of age. Interestingly, these persons indicate that they would more likely lag behind the Kingston metropolitan area and other urban centers. The charge to us from the ICT-wide internet coverage. Mr. Speaker, access to the internet was also enabled by the USF, the most recent being the one in Emancipation Park. There will be 4 new public Wi-Fi hot subjects in our everyday life, from cars and refrigerators to medical devices, are being connected to the internet. Attendant equipment will assist the Spectrum Management Authority to enable more efficient management of the spectrum and digital society. Mr. Speaker, you may recall that last year the youth is 18 to 35 years old with training, certification, and employment experience to become functional training program. 665 completed all the modules. Mr. Speaker, of the participants. For this financial year 1920, the top 10 participants and will focus on business process outsourcing training at all levels. Members of this Honorable House may recall the government's announcement of its approval of $7.9 billion in funding to their time frame. It's considered way too long. Renamed the Technology Integration in Infant and Primary Schools project with a view to significantly reduce connected device. People. In the last financial year, eGov Jamaica developed a working prototype of a mobile app for the app, which was demonstrated to the TAJ, was well received and will be developed during this application called MyGovJM to be rolled out in this financial year as well. The app will connect government and community initiatives. It will allow our citizens to report issues affecting their community, broken street lights, uncollected garbage if it exists, and have it automatically routed to the relevant authority. This is what digital government, citizen participation, and citizen engagement is all about. This is offices and postal agencies should not be closed without us providing an alternative, and not 10 miles away. 241 post offices on 2 studies to help us define Jamaica's postal market and assist in developing an e-commerce online portal to facilitate customers to shop online using their U.S. Miami mailing address. Mr. Speaker, members of the to commence the debate on the same this month. We know that the passage of the bill will usher in a new paradigm for our people, and so we will be reconvening the Joint Select Committee. There will be 2 more meetings, and then we take the bill. Activity of Jamaica, we're also improving the public's ability to be safe in cyberspace. Cyber threats are engaged Jamaicans about how to be safe. We will continue to serve our people. It will be characterized by scientific research unearthing groundbreaking energy mix that capitalizes on clean and renewable sources. Jamaica has made an even larger number, some 200,000 plus persons that are outside the workforce. My message skills. Sending emails with attached files requires digital skills. Using copy and installing and configuring software requires digital skills. Using basic arithmetic formulas in changing, and these changes are ICT. You still need to be ICT literate because more and more of the services that government is providing, we want all our citizens to benefit from all that our expanding digital world. To those in our tertiary institutions, software engineering skills are in short supply. As we accelerate the pace to industries, to do your part in accelerating this urgent transition to a knowledge-based energy. And together, we will make Jamaica the place of choice to live.
Lovely, lovely, lovely.
All right, good.
Very good, very good.
The ministry is creating the framework to transform Jamaica into a knowledge-based and digital society.
Order, please. Members, there's a resolution.
Mr. Speaker, I have now provided copies of the document.
A statement by Minister, and I wish to put that. Those in favor? Aye! Those
copies of the statement which you asked, and I've given copies. So I provided to the Marshal copies to read into the record of the I would like to do it.
let me follow you.
The phone. So I provided copies so you can have it and the other members. And I would like to read for the same exact thing.
Mr. Robinson, I hate to say this.
What?
Things. You don't just get up and read your statement,
No,
Mr.
I
Robinson.
provided.
That is not the
hard copy. I provided the hard copies. You allowed the member from
Robinson.
Southwest.
The government side has no objection to the member. We are now at the item statements by Minister. I will make my statement and then you can read into the record. Mr. Speaker, within the corporate area and sections of... Mr. Speaker, we have heard the cries of homeowners and business operators. A regular or sufficient supply of potable water. As you know, Mr. Speaker, I'm faced with the issue firsthand, myself, and the supply of potable water. Indeed, the member from Western, by a lack of supply of potable water. We understand the great level we appreciate the patience and understanding being exercised by residents. Groundwater wells located at the foothills around the city, that is the Constant Spring and Seaview water treatment plants, and the Hope and the Ryacobre Whitemall system, which consists of 55 million gallons of water per day to Kingston. And the dry season lasts for a combined 8 months of the year, is 63 million gallons per day. However, current production is 18 million gallons per day, but it is only producing 8 million gallons, and it is now only producing 7 million gallons per day. It is now only producing it is producing at capacity 2.6 million gallons per day. And Camp West, accumulated, they produce 7 million gallon systems at 6.1 million gallons per day due to the challenges with those and the production capacity that goes into Kingston. And it is shown in red. On average, 3 million gallons per day. During the dry season, that production falls to 49. For the rest of the year, that Kingston is somewhere in the region of 26 million gallons per day. These low outputs are a direct water and bore rivers up to Hermitage, limited ability to transfer water. Under current water production conditions, only approximately 26 billion gallons on our installed capacity. Under extreme, when we compared our situation last year at this time, both the Mona Reservoir, when compared to levels as at today, the Mona Dam is basically empty. And that is the inlet coming from the Hope River. There is no water runs here. And you can know that you're at the bottom because you can see the buildup of sediment and silt. So the country's development and is very aware that if immediate and urgent action is not taken, the short, as we are all, and affect various aspects of its operations, including supply, store, rate, going all the way to East Kingston. Well, you know, Mr. Speaker, today we had a break along, and I'm going to explain why. No, I'm going to explain without water, but they are now working on it. But I wanted to show the slide which would highlight the transmission line. And members to debate that there are management deficiencies with our very old network. This pipe in diameter, in diameter. So it's a huge pipe, are asbestos cement pipes, which means compared to ductile iron pipes, which can take the vibrations. But pipes, when they reach the old pipes, these pipes begin to break, and once water pressure gets into them, even without the road work that is going on, these pipes, bad planning. But since 2009, any major replacement of distribution, St. Thomas would want to raise it. But as I said, Mr. Speaker, I don't want to be distracted from you have to explain to your constituents. This line takes water, it branches off for all the constituencies here. So that would be Western Kingston, the main line, which runs along, very old. That is where a piece of the pipe there, that line, is the asbestos along the man. When this line is pressured, this old line breaks. So they have had about 10 breaks. And so we have started. Mr. Speaker, I want to just go then very. So, Mr. Speaker, the very aid which would improve supplies to Western St. Andrew, Southwest St. Andrew, West Kingston, and all of East Kingston are already replaced between the Tullow Spring and Ferry. The current work will see the replacement of 1 6-inch pipe. So, for members, it will be somewhere about here that we will continue. 1.4. Eventuality, Mr. Speaker. The NWC had to take out spring water treatment plant as the roof had collapsed. This happened about capacity but these works are moving into their final stages. Notwithstanding, Mr. Speaker, we are replacing any road that we are improving, widening, we will be changing out the water. And Minister of Water, Dr. Horace Chang, made a comprehensive program to improve availability of the replacement of the Raya, but that program stopped. Washington Boulevard to Constant Spring, which would accommodate increments of the water system in the corporate area. In addition, there are wells located, consists of key components, which includes major transmission main replacement and through the construction of a 15 million gallon water treatment plant on the Rio Cobre River. Speaker, is estimated at 100 Terrace to Morosco Road. The installation of 2.7 kilometers of 16-inch diameter completed. To West Kings House Road, the installation of 3 kilometers in areas that are mainly supplied by the... Mr. Speaker, we will also have to look at the Norman Manley Airport Road from a very old, I mean, when we say very old, this is probably more than 50 years old, 7-inch diameter pipe all along, capacity $2, and we won't need to dig up the road in Stony Hill. The pipeline that transfers water from the Seaview is in urgent need of replacement. It is planned to install a 10 inches main, as I said before, 6 miles to North Street. And that will see the installation of 12 kilometers Stone Road to Glenmuir Road, and this is right by Sabina Park. This from Tullow Springs and from the Rio Cobre, in fact from the new treatment plant which we are going to build. Along this example, the Mona Reservoir is empty or Hermitage is low. We can increase, we have other alternatives. Mr. Speaker, we are also going to allow again for improvement in capacity and flexibility. So, section of the system here, so that if Constant Spring or Hope or Mona is low, we will be able to take. Speaker, the National Water Commission is pursuing the installation of a new 15 million at the point water treatment established under a public-private partnership to the NWC at an agreement. The total cost $1 billion Jamaican dollars. It's a major public-private partnership. And if we could get the slide here, Lagoon is a wastewater receptacle for water which I had shown you before. So that will be putting in 15 million gallons per day of potable. Received the approval from PIMSEC, the Public Sector Investment Management, will now have the construction company in water infrastructure development, Vinci. So, done for this plant. Being pursued parallel to the wastewater treatment. This will have to be done on a similar platform, meaning that we will have to use a public-private. I can also say that possible replacement of the existing pipelines along Spanish Town Road. If you could go back to the slide, to the 36-inch ductile iron main, 6.1 kilometers of 36 inches. I believe that would be somewhere about here. And then we will make a connection of a 24 inches pipeline to the diameter and 1.9 kilometers of 6 inches diameter distribution pipelines will be in the western end and on the eastern. So, for example, Western St. Andrew would benefit. of the Spanish Town Road to distribution mains to improve the distribution of water into the community. So to be clear, the communities to better improve the water distribution. The total, Mr. Speaker, is discussing now is for the Ministry of Finance to advance the funds to the NWC, the allocation. And it will probably last between 18 to 24 months to complete. But at each point, by the government, including the movement of water between different systems, and I have to know, out of St. Catherine, you have a very good source, the Rio Cobre. We need rain, and I'm not afraid to pray. Conquers all. So while I'm praying, I'm working. So, Mr. Speaker, serious discussion with the NWC for the supply of information. The NWC has said that they are putting out information, but there has to be a more equitable, that even though at least the general public, and to ensure that there is equity in the distribution of water. For distribution to take place, because we do have water mains, as I said, that are old. Some of them are asbestos cement, and some of them are so corroded back we discover a leak. I had a big effort. Mr. Speaker, we have allocated somewhere in the region of $100 million for trucking. Mr. Speaker, we have given out water tanks. We are in a continuous mode of providing water tanks. Now, bear in mind, we are giving out water tanks. Well, we have distributed in 4 constituencies so far, and we will increase that. Close attention to, as a parliament, is this whole issue of climate change. This is not the first, say it's El Nino, but the truth is that our weather patterns have changed, and it is reflected in Speaker. We have to look at increasing our increased storage during the rainy period. What that means, Mr. Speaker, is that the clean with clay, and so if you dredge it, you could disturb the sealed lining. So the plan is to construct a new facility downstream, and so the existing facility, we are now reviewing the implementation of phase 2 of the Yalas water supply system to be stored in the Mona Reservoir and accessing the Swift River from the Portland side of the mountain range. So all of that now, those plans which were drafted up 30 years ago, we are pulling them up now, dusting them off. Test. That's a risky venture as well, because it is. But there are still areas which we know water exists, and once we talk generation, production by the current water situation every day. The government recognizes that this can have threat to medium and long term. We are nearing completion of the water distribution in those areas. In fact, for the next 50 years or more, because the quality pipes for the next 50 to 60 years at least. Mr. Speaker, we are hoping rain, but that we will have rain in the catchments. Mr. Speaker, with the works now underway, we are building the resilience. Urge the presentation.
Mr. Speaker, in this situation, both because President spokesman on water to give him some latitude, but from one of the most severely affected. I think the first part is that is currently being experienced by the majors of the corporate area, in fact, that have not had any water flowing through their pipes sections are very, very devastating effects. Places have had to close, some going out of business, and in fact, perhaps worst of all, because of the age of the children, the basic schools have been affected because the children can't quite understand all that is happening. And this is particularly for people, Speaker, the nature of the severity of the has been inadequate. Mr. Political Directorate and the end of the sympathy that they have shown for the populations involved and for their. But why do I say that it has been an inadequate solution? Inadequate and the collapse of actions of the roadwork contractors was not only in the Mandela. What you had was a situation where not only all international standards about to what is done, the telecoms people will tell you, despite repeated efforts even to get to their business place, those business operators compensation for loss of business that they have suffered in the buildings. It's a serious matter. And, well, now we have the circumstance. In the circumstance, we are forced to confront a space which, as I said earlier, you now have some fiscal space. But let us not, I hear some members talking about the need for the 60 million US plus, that you said this is expenditure, problem which has had a long overhang. And as we make, so to speak, a virtue of necessity by the Bernard Lodge development, the larger, understand that you have said there is a review. Although in the middle of the review, that the review, especially in the face of the looming climate change challenge, he spoke, not for 12 minutes. But, yeah, for...
Dr. Philip. No, but you are not protecting...
No, Mr. Speaker. We have a situation, immediate needs of the community, for which we are paying dearly. I want to suggest you can't order trucks and get them in time for Water Commission. But explore the option for Water Commission on behalf of communities that day in, day out just don't have no water. And you say water thing to be done to allow people. I appreciate the 500 tanks that you say have been distributed. And I'm not being ungrateful for whatever share we have got to deal just with the water cover. Mr. Speaker, there is just, the fact of the matter is that we have the long-term problem in the countries are to the south. You say this will take us to deal with this long-term issue of how do we bring the water from the north to the south, where many households are going to have to return to practices such as rainfall harvesting that were once very long-term planning horizons. And so this represents a fixed relief, but we still have to deal with the long-term problem. Storage facility at the time when it was built. We have constructed supplies or expense, but we have not done a commensurate expansion either of East St. Thomas is telling us passionately has involved depleting rural communities of the water that water lock-offs in the corporate area at least for 20 years. Every year when the drought, these investments should be viewed in generational time scale, and infrastructure committee of Parliament, and to allow for us to find some not only communities in the corporate area. And in welcoming all that you have said here, Prime Minister, the emergent...
Prime Minister, you mentioned, I think every member in this House suffers from water, lack of it. Systems in the country, and none of those systems are interconnected. None of the systems, that's number one. So the systems across the country, over 200 of them, are not linked together. That's number one. It's been a couple of years, and I use, when it comes back, management wells. There is still 200 wells in Kingston as we speak that are not using now, and there's technology out there. Soapberry. It's profitable entities within the NWC. Prime Minister, we won't solve this problem unless we start acceptable. It's not acceptable in the NWC. And what was the pump and tank program? $1 billion was put in place in ensuring that every school, and we are still waiting, is around. It comes in the commission to manage. We are going, water is there to ensure that you get more water from the Rio Cobre. Just take it off and use the CWTC. That has been on the books of a drought there in terms of dealing with the nitrate problem. All I'm saying is the opposition stands ready because it is the country. Let me advise you. The presenter was the Prime Minister to make what I would call a national presentation. And they address the standing order beyond being able to make a question. You wanted to? Prime Minister, we await you.
I believe you've made a very comprehensive Yalas pass. The people of St. and I'm seeing a second phase of the water removal offensive system, water to the corporate area, and ease that pressure on the people of St. Thomas relative to, I know we have to go, but
Mr. Hilton.
Thank you, Speaker. Prime Minister, the trunk meal, Waterhouse situation, that are older communities with older underlying pipes, are really now suffering, but the pipes were just not burst and broken, and of course the construction continues. This started from Ferry with a major break in the pipe at Ferry. Perhaps really we have to look at it lasting the 24 months or close to it because of the constant need to change the production, the distribution of the water, and otherwise we're really in a situation where pieces are particularly breaking down and just bursting as soon as you get of the water, notwithstanding the water.
Million. The NW from its current, no, Mr. Prime. The international contract for is based on performance. A good amount of money, thousands of the 10, and the contract has been. No.
With the regard, those wells would probably had wells. He said that they shouldn't even consider those. The issue for us is so that the public feels satisfied in any way. Is something that I will go back to the exploring now, looking at rural, so they are exploring that. Mr. Speaker, there are proposals by the tourism industry. In the future, Thomas, given the fact that and if there is an overflow, while still the cost is up to 4 times the existing cost of water at this time, no. If we can lease the trucks and offer the service involved in this business.
I recognize the problem. An issue that in the water beyond the rates that they for $15,000. So
take what you're saying, member. The issue I'm raising, total private backed out to a private operator. Remember now, what we ended up doing. Get back to that. We would prefer to have a concession. Program needs to be a little bit more developed. The transparency of the expenditure that we have to undertake under emergency procurement rules. Mr. Speaker, the mid-peep is the Spanish Town. That will have to be done under emergency procedure, be benchmarked. So there are ways to benchmark outside of what's taken that we should not be using the 60 million pipeline from what they're doing. They're going according to. Mr. Speaker, the issue was raised by the former Minister of Climate Change. New water is the elite, but the NWC does not. Yes, with the Israeli company that we so $10 million US. The answer to that is so. For example, that will take several $100 million. Was what we are faced with now. The programming now $1 million US. Mr. Speaker, as a follow-up, whole leader of the opposition, there is no in. You may recall that we dug up the entire list under that project. It wasn't with IDB to do the project. We had lack of planning. There are exigencies. There are roadway connect the pipe. So we could the Constant Spring pipeline. So Mr. Size more we will have to change that. And
says the question. Mr. Speaker, business of the House. That he have the document prepared. He has me in something. I expect that the member will be armed with the sword.
We accommodate of the
important for the Parliament and the country to know. Prime Minister Bruce, which will see every Jamaican citizen, government card, response. There are some knotty issues that have to be addressed because it will not just capture names, but serious work on this had started. Responsibility review was done, and it was discovered that much of and the many government agencies which played a critical role. The Jamaica from 79 will be rolled out to sensitize and educate the public. National ID line that the government had not gotten value for 12 with a focus on international trends. Established Republic of South Korea. Baseline Research Consult March 2014. Communication and disingenuous. Maintain is that the matter to influence public opinion in spite of the net and undated resignation letters, this impression that the PM, and I think it's totally unfortunate, Mr. Speaker, and I believe it's important.
We're not going to have a debate on this. As an answer, that's it. It is. Prime Minister.
No, Mr. On a point of order, sir. And earlier, I voted. Prime Minister.
2017.
Right. 2017 to question. That's the first question.
I don't know what. Give permission to read a fit. This is my feet.
But you're finished.
You don't tell me that. If he needs to ask question, he has to table.
The leader of the opposition business.
Yes.
Similar permission. Right?
Parliament today to answer supplementary questions. That is.
Mr. Paulwell, I'm going to rule.
But I should go ahead, sir.
The Speaker is on the floor and go back to do it, Mr. Campbell.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister
if
needs no protection.
was brought to our attention because a decision was taken by you that he should still on the floor because I think that in the circumstances, it's a reply from the
Mr. Campbell. Mr. Speaker, or she doesn't trust the system, will they have access? The card is not mandatory. It is other forms of ID in the first instance to provide services, but will be required to register. Speaker, that he has stated that 3 months many things and that they have ignored. And he was told 3 months he should retract his statement and offer an apology. Thank you.
At that time, in this national identification system, sanitized its voters list, brought to a national identification system. It reached Parliament in 2000. Mandatory. What would that do before we developed a mandatory? It was revived again, and the Koreans, the South Koreans, did not compulsory. Out of good faith, because the leader of the opposition is correct. We should bring through this history of almost 37 years. IDB funds would run out, and we met the constraint on the government of the government, of the opposition. One understands these identification systems on the matter of the needs in all. Let it be clear to the country that
was to ask the Prime Minister on the same page in this House that exists in our standing order to a joint select committee.
Before requesting that you completed matter, the influence or the decision-making of chief basis formed the base stage to him and his interpretation of them.
Bush speech. What's the basis to respond?
Mr. Bunting. Mr.
Provided. It was simply my intention to comment and provide the standing orders.
Ask Mr. Bunting to withdraw a statement.
What? There's no objection.
Fairly. When I ask him to hear, I'm asking members to stay in their place until